The globe has become inhospitable as a result of human-caused climate change, pandemics, and conflict. The ruling class leaves as soon as they can and relocates to the space colony Kepler 209. The colony eventually has access to contemporary technology and space travel, but because of the intense radiation there, they are now sterile. The Ulysses project is launched 2 generations later to determine if it is feasible to return to Earth, but the first mission is lost shortly after taking off. Later, they send the astronauts Louise, Tucker, and Holden aboard Ulysses 2, a second spacecraft. Unfortunately, the spacecraft crashes onto a tidal flat close to a weather beacon that transmits telemetry data back to Kepler, since entering the atmosphere turns out to be harsher than anticipated. Louise searches for her teammates after swimming as far as she could to the beach to stay alive. Holden is lying on the sand, but he's already passed away, and Tucker is in the spacecraft with a broken leg. Louise is forced to go exploring by herself and begins by using a biometer to test the water and discover some indications of life. Louise comes upon a jellyfish-like species after discovering some kind of chelicerata, and as she tries to get a sample for examination, the critter unexpectedly stings her wrist. Louise is fortunate to have a first aid kit, so she sprays some medical spray on the cut right away before putting the sample in her red bag. Louise loses vision as a result of the surrounding fog at the precise moment Tucker warns her of an approaching storm, at which point Tucker exits the capsule and fires a flare into the sky. Unaware that a mystery man also observed the flare, Louise cautiously starts walking back to the shuttle after the light. He approaches Tucker first and assaults him, but Tucker defends himself by using the flare rifle to frighten him away. Louise discovers that Tucker and the shuttle have been transported to a different location by the time she eventually makes it through the fog. She uses the scope on her pistol to look around after hearing Tucker call for assistance, and sees several individuals pulling her shuttle. Louise is suddenly attacked from behind by another bunch, and she goes unconscious. Later, Louise and Tucker find themselves unconscious in a big watery hole. They are horrified to see survivors sealing the pit's lid. Louise goes up and through a hole to beg for medical supplies when she notices Tucker's wounds becoming worse, but the surface is too slick and she slips and falls. When a mystery individual suddenly throws a rope down, Louise manages to escape and discovers the Muds, a large settlement of fertile people. Louise finds it hard to believe she is seeing kids once more. The Muds beg her to assist the guy whose face was hurt by Tucker's flare, but because she doesn't speak their language, they pull her away. When Louise attempts to explain that she needs her supplies, Narvik eventually arrives. She accompanies Louise to her shuttle and can speak English. It's simple to locate the medical supplies, but Louise also discovers that the ship's electronics has been completely destroyed. She is pushed to the ground and told to act properly when she hesitates to move. Louise then uses the spray to treat the victim, taking advantage of the opportunity to stow away some medical equipment in her clothing. Additionally, she observes that her red bag is missing and realizes the biometer is inside. She gives Tucker medication and tells him about all the children and infants she witnessed before being tossed back into the abyss. She thinks that because their spacecraft is broken, they must locate the biometer and use it to make a distress call. Tucker, however, is aware of how serious his wounds are and that he won't survive, so he uses a means of self-immolation that he keeps hidden in his army tag necklace. Louise, who is now feeling lonely, starts to reflect on her early years. Her father Blake was an astronaut as well, but he perished on the first trip. When she was little, Blake gave her a matchbox that had 3 well-known astronauts on the front and then demonstrated that he had a matching set for himself. Additionally, he instructed her to light one at a specific time, and he would follow suit, assuring her that they would be reunited before the final candle was out. Louise frequently uses the term, "for the many," which her father taught her to help her develop a sense of concern for the larger good. Louise just has one match remaining, it is revealed when the flashback fades. Louise starts to climb up once again as the tides finally start to pour in and fill the hole. She grabs hold of the lid and cries out for assistance. A man agrees to take her outside and tie her to one of the neighborhood's boats. While witnessing a net bring in Tucker's body, Louise acts in a way to win their trust. Louise witnesses Tucker's body being transported on a raft as the boat departs in the middle of the night, which triggers another flashback. Louise's father showed her a tree seedling that would not thrive in their space colony, and informed her that the people had pillaged Earth's resources. Louise was unable to determine whether the experiment with the seedling was successful since he abruptly departed. Louise is returned to the hole as the water starts to recede the next morning. Louise receives her medical spray from Mila, who unexpectedly visits her. Louise begs Mila to assist her in getting the biometer when she finally manages to speak with the girl and picks up a few phrases by scribbling on the wall. Later, Louise hears screams outside, and a guy raises the lid of the hole before lowering some females and a baby into. Louise observes through the hole that the community is under siege and that several individuals are being killed or abducted. Mila discovered the red bag, but she has also been taken hostage. Louise and the kids manage to get cover just in time as a guy arrives to the hole to look inside. When things have settled down, Narvik arrives to assist them and reveals that she is Mila's mother. After selecting Tucker's flare rifle and Mila's toy, Narvik leaves to save her daughter. Despite sharing some food with her, Louise follows her because she wants to aid in saving Mila, but Narvik is unsure whether she can trust her. The two ladies climb up a large rock when they hear Mila's screams coming from a distance and discover that the hostages are being transported aboard a boat. Louise orders Narvik to fire the flare pistol into the air to create a distraction, but Narvik just wants to attack while she is blind, forcing Louise to use force to take her out. Louise then fires the flare, and the guys start to search for the light source. Louise leaps into the water, using the cover of the fog to her advantage, and swims fast to the boat while they are preoccupied. She eventually discovers her red bag in a net after climbing up, but the males board as well before she can depart. Louise is forced to conceal herself with the other captives and Nalia. The boat eventually comes to a rest next to a huge cargo ship that can weather the periodic storms and floods. The convicts are brought to a guard named Paling, who assigns each one to a certain location. While Mila and the other females are taken away, the lads are ordered to labor. Then, when searching for the owner of Louise's pistol, Paling discovers that Louise is not a local. Paling leads her down a hallway and searches her before introducing her to Gibson, the captain of the ship and an Ulysses 1 survivor who is familiar with Louise from when she was a young girl. Gibson tells Louise about his group's first experience with the Muds after they landed, while Louise explains what occurred to her ship and the disappearance of the biometer to him. The natives had previously been quite friendly with Blake, but one day they revolted and destroyed the Ulysses 1 capsule and its communication technology, killing him in the process. Gibson and Louise talk about the possibility of returning colonists to Earth after learning that Blake had a scheme to construct a massive dam and generate power from the ocean. Gibson's adoptive son Neil interrupts their talk and gives Louise an origami space shuttle as a present. Gibson brings Louise to a cabin where she may stay for the time being after giving her a tour of the area to demonstrate the dam. She quickly retires to bed and makes an effort to cope with her sorrow while recalling further scientific lectures she had with her father. After taking a shower the next morning, Louise discovers blood between her legs and learns she is fertile, meaning she might have children here. After that, she is led to a class where all of the Mud's daughters are present, including Mila, who doesn't appear to be having a good time. Gibson is educating them, and after they sing together, he offers them the option to question Louise about the space colony in any way they choose. After class, Louise goes for a stroll and encounters Neil, who receives personalized instruction rather than joining the others. After Louise helps him with his math homework because he likes astronauts, he reveals to her the hidden object behind the curtain, which is a little tree sprouting in a jar. When Louise realizes the experiment, she asks Neil how he learned to carry it out. Neil responds that a weird man resides in a cabin close to the engine room. Louise asks Neil to drive her there, but he declines because he isn't allowed to speak to the man at all. Louise immediately navigates to the man's cabin after snatching a ship's chart from a door, where she discovers that her father is alive and has been kept hidden all this time. Gibson then appears and starts defending his falsehoods by saying that Blake truly led the revolt because he joined with the Muds as a result of falling in love with a Mud lady. After 15 years, Louise is then finally permitted inside and is reunited with her father. She is unhappy that her father has abandoned his daughter and betrayed the mission, but Blake argues that the Kepler inhabitants shouldn't ever come back because he has to stop the mistakes. Louise exits the room in pain. Louise eventually sees the weather station where they can attach the biometer to contact Kepler later, when the tide is high. In exchange for Gibson's pledge to locate the biometer, she chooses to reveal to him that she is pregnant in order to provide the necessary evidence. When Louise is later invited to dinner, Mooney, the mother of Neil, tells her how Gibson intervened to save Neil from death since he was born with his umbilical cord wrapped around his neck. Gibson welcomed them into his family once they got in touch that day. The power suddenly goes out, and Paling tells Gibson that someone broke in and killed the guards to get to the power box. Gibson issues a command for everyone to quickly hide in their rooms before he departs with a gun. The attacker surprises Louise as she enters a hallway to return to her cabin, holding a knife to her throat and injuring her. It is subsequently made clear that Narvik, who is hunting for her daughter, is the invader. When Louise and Narvik arrive at the girls' room to meet Mila, they are immediately surrounded by security personnel. While Mila screams out for her mother, the ladies attempt to fight, but Paling arrives and kicks Narvik since she somehow recognizes her name. Then Paling commands his men to take Narvik away, but before she does so, she drops Mila's toy by mistake and mutters to Louise that they only take the girls. After that, when the power is back, Mooney cures Louise's injury while cryptically claiming to have his eyes. Louise sees that all of the posters on the wall include images of pregnant women and little girls. Gibson checks on her at that same moment and informs Louise that Narvik was one of the guards that betrayed him during the uprising. Louise ultimately learns that the girls are being imprisoned for Gibson's future breeding intentions when they debate the matter. Although Louise is repulsed, she poses as Gibson's ally in order to escape being detained as well. When Gibson opens the red bag that Paling suddenly enters with, the biometer isn't there. Before going to his kid and having him see a toy he found, he sends Louise away and instructs Paling to keep a watch on her. The biometer is later discovered by Gibson to be housed inside the doll. When Louise gets back to her room, she hears a disturbance and discovers Mila hiding in her closet. However, Paling knocks on her door unexpectedly and barges inside since he has heard that a child is gone. When he swiftly scans the area and cannot see Mila, he decides not to leave and instead starts making advances on Louise, not caring if she rejects him. He puts her against the wall after some fight, but he is prevented from taking advantage of her by a sound coming from the closet. Paling makes a move to investigate, but Louise runs over and kisses him to divert his attention. Paling suddenly begins to tremble and collapses to the ground as he passes away as a result of Louise accidentally giving him a poison capsule from her army tag necklace. After that, Louise takes Paling's weapon and starts creeping about the ship with Mila. When they come upon a guard, Mila diverts his attention, and Louise slams him to the ground from behind. They then arrive to the cell housing all of the inmates who serve as labor slaves. Before leaving with the others, Louise hands the guard's firearm to Narvik, who is also present. Louise seeks out Blake, who reveals to her something through the window. It turns out Gibson is heading to the weather station with Neil and Mooney, which is strange because he never leaves the ship. While the inmates are rescuing the girls, Louise rushes to the ship. When Louise sees the toy Neil gave Blake, she assumes Gibson is in possession of the biometer. Without her, Gibson will provide some sort of proof that she doesn't comprehend, and Blake shows that Neil isn't a mud. Blake informs Louise that he never lighted his final match as he gives her a hug as she agrees to quit Gibson. While avoiding the guards firing, the muds manage to escape off the ship. Before the gang escapes into the open and other guards use the opportunity to execute a few of them, Louise joins them and shoots a couple of the guys. Louise assists the party in locating a boat before jumping in to swim to the weather station, shooting any guards that approach too closely. Gibson is ready to send the message after taking Neil's blood, when Louise emerges and threatens him with her weapon. When Neil answers, Gibson points a pistol at him and says that he is Blake's son, making him her half-brother. Gibson just shoots Mooney in the head as she attempts to defend her son. Gibson uses the biometer to relay the information right away to Kepler, as Louise lowers her rifle to save Neil from suffering the same fate. Taking advantage of his distraction, Louise tackles Gibson into the water, strangles him, and drowns him before nearly drowning herself in the process. Fortunately, Narvik saves her and performs CPR on her to bring back her life. The Muds reunite with Louise and Blake, and the group departs aboard a tugboat. Neil is dealing with the loss of his mother, so Louise visits him and gives him her matchbox as a symbol of hope. Later, while playing in the village, a group of kids start to grow alarmed as they spot figures in the mist. When kids understand that Gibson's power over their kidnapped parents has finally ended, they perk up.